Hi, everyone. This episode of Beach House 34 contains sensitive and potentially distressing material. It includes discussions of mental illness, family tragedy, and violence. It also features audio recordings that were originally aired by ABC Action News in Tampa Bay. These are used here with the intent to educate and inform. Listener discretion is advised, as some of this content might be disturbing to some. The goal here is to provide insight into the complexities of this case, to emphasize the importance of mental health awareness, and to honor those lives that were impacted by this tragedy. If you'd rather watch this podcast, it is on YouTube and Spotify. And as always, I'll have those links for you in the show notes. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe or follow so that you never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. It helps us reach more true crime fans just like you. You think you know what heartbreak looks like? Let me take you to a quiet, gated community in Tampa, Florida. This is a place where everything seemed perfect until it wasn't. It was January of 2011, and the Schenecker family was the picture of suburban life. Parker Schenecker, he was a dedicated father, a career Army intelligence officer. He was stationed overseas in Qatar. His wife, Julie, was a stay-at-home mom. She had once served as a Russian linguist in the U.S. Army, and together they had built what looked like a beautiful life. Their two children, Calyx, a bright, driven 16-year-old who excelled in the International Baccalaureate program, and Beau, a 13-year-old star soccer goalkeeper, were everything that a parent could hope for. Now, from the outside, their lives seemed enviable. They were this happy family living in a sprawling 3,300 square foot home in a gated neighborhood. But beneath the surface, trouble was brewing. Julie, who had a long history of mental health struggles, was deteriorating. Her relationships with her children were strained, her marriage was crumbling, and her dependence on prescription drugs and alcohol was starting to take hold. The family was attending therapy, but what began as a minor issue snowballed into a full-blown crisis. On the morning of January 28, 2011, police responded to a call from Julie's mother, worried that something was wrong. When officers arrived, they found a blood-stained Julie, dazed and slurring her words, and two notes taped to the front door. Inside, they uncovered a tragedy so horrifying that it left the entire nation stunned. Two brilliant young lives were gone, lost at the hands of their own mother. But why? What drives someone to commit the unthinkable? Was it a descent into psychosis, or was there something even darker? Tonight, we'll dive into the haunting case of Julie Schenecker and uncover the truth behind the tragedy. Welcome to Beach House 34. I'm your host, Christine, and tonight we cover the case called Picture Perfect: When Mental Illness Turns Deadly. It all began on the morning of January 28, 2011, when police were called to check on the Schenecker family in their upscale Tampa neighborhood. Now, Julie Schenecker's mom had contacted the authorities after she had been unable to reach her daughter or even the kids. She told the police that Julie was struggling mentally, emotionally, in every sense of the word. Something felt wrong. Her husband, Parker, he had been sent overseas to Qatar and wouldn't be back until early February. When officers arrived, the house appeared calm from the outside. On the front door were two handwritten notes. One of these was addressed to friends and said, "We've gone to NYC. Be back Tuesday." The other was for a carpool group. Both of them were signed by Julie. The officers knocked on the door, with no response. They then made their way around to the back of the house, where they found Julie on the lanai near the pool. She was wearing slippers and a robe that was stained with blood, and she appeared to be unconscious. Even though there was blood on her robe, she didn't look like she was hurt. They called out to her, and she stirred. They asked her about the blood and asked if she was hurt. She responded by saying, "I wish a scratch was the reason for this blood." Julie smelled of alcohol, and her speech was slurred. She didn't appear to know where she was and definitely wasn't acting normal. The police asked her where the kids were, and she told them that they were inside, then said that the police could go inside the house. The police took Julie inside the home, and she sat down as they went through the house. Julie then asked them, "Who called you? Where is my gun? I would like to use it on myself. Did you find my kids?" She told the police where the kids were and then said, "My husband is going to be so distraught." In the garage, they found 13-year-old Beau seated in the front passenger seat of the family's SUV. He was wrapped in a blanket, his seatbelt still fastened. A bullet hole was in the windshield, and Beau had been found shot twice, once in the head and another near the mouth. It was as though his life had been paused in motion. Upstairs, in one of the bedrooms, they discovered 16-year-old Calyx lying on her bed, also covered with a blanket. A laptop sat nearby on a desk. She too had been shot in the head and then also near the mouth. As police walked around the house, in the master bedroom in a drawer, police found a gun instruction book, as well as a picture of the whole family in much, much happier days. They also located a .38 caliber revolver, which was purchased just days earlier, along with 15 live rounds and 5 spent shell casings. On the bedside table was a bottle of beer. Scattered across the bedroom were bottles of oxycodone, hydrocodone, lithium, and amoxicillin. They also located a spiral notebook, and inside this notebook, in her own handwriting, Julie described how she planned to carry out the murders and why. She believed, she wrote, that she was sparing her children from future pain and humiliation. The police called in other departments and arrested 50-year-old Julie Schenecker. Now, Beau was an 8th grader at Liberty Middle School, and he was known for being an amazing goalkeeper on his soccer team. When his soccer teammates heard the news, they broke down, as you might imagine. Many were unable to process how someone who was so young and so full of life was suddenly gone. One of his closest friends could not stop sobbing. He remembered the Friday night McDonald's trips that they'd shared after practice. Calyx was a sophomore at King High School. She was known for being a model student, a member of the cross-country team, and part of her high school's prestigious International Baccalaureate program. Friends and teachers admired her drive and her independence, and she had dreams of making a difference someday. But how did it get this way? At first glance, Julie Schenecker, she seemed like an ordinary suburban mom. She was a devoted wife, a proud parent, someone that you'd wave to at the mailbox or, you'd chat with at a PTA meeting. She had played volleyball in college. She served her country as a Russian linguist in the U.S. Army, and she raised these 2 extraordinary children while her husband, Parker, a dedicated Army colonel, served his country, oftentimes heading overseas on a moment's notice. But as we'll see, Julie's life was far from ordinary. Beneath the surface was a woman who was struggling with profound mental health issues. She had a history of trauma and a mounting sense of isolation. Her connection to the victims, they couldn't have been closer. Calyx and Beau weren't just her children. They were the lights of her life, or at least they had been. To the outside world, the Schenecker family looked like a perfect snapshot of suburban success. But what unfolded in January of 2011 shattered that illusion, exposing these cracks that had been just widening for years. Julie's story began in Muscatine, Iowa, a small Midwestern town surrounded by fields and rivers. As a young woman, Julie stood out as an athlete. She excelled in both track and basketball. She was the kind of person that people looked up to. She was dedicated, disciplined, and full of potential. Those who knew her in high school said that she was the epitome of what wholesome is. You wanted to be like her. Later on, she attended the University of Northern Iowa, where she played volleyball before she enlisted in the Army. In the late 1980s, Julie was stationed in Germany, working in military intelligence as a Russian linguist. It was there that she met Parker Schenecker, a young officer who shared her drive and her sense of purpose. They fell in love, they got married, and they embarked on the life of a military family. In 1992, Julie was diagnosed with depression and began treatment. Around this same time, she decided to leave the military to focus on raising her family. Now, together, Julie and Parker had two children, and they did this while they moved from one duty station to the next. They lived in Germany. This is where Calyx was born, Arizona, Hawaii, where Beau was born, and Virginia until they finally settled in Tampa, Florida in 2008. Now, Julie, she wanted six kids, but Parker only wanted two. So after Beau was born, he had a vasectomy. Julie had begun to suffer from depression very early on in the relationship. She had seen psychiatrists at every location that they were stationed at. Now, after Beau was born, Julie went through significant postpartum depression. In 2001, Julie's depression had been so bad that she had to be hospitalized for 9 months. Now, during that time, her husband hired a nanny to help with the kids. And Parker's mom, his mom, she would also come over to help. The same year, Julie was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, and severe depression. Later, she was also diagnosed with personality disorder. Now, I know that these terms might be unfamiliar to some of you. So let's just go through them, each one, and just kind of describe what they are exactly. So let's talk first about bipolar disorder. Now, essentially, bipolar disorder, this is a lifelong condition, and it's a mental health condition that is characterized by extreme mood swings that include you're either emotionally high or you're very, very low. So, very, very depressed. The second condition that Julie was diagnosed with was this schizoaffective disorder. And this too is a chronic mental health condition that actually combines the symptoms of schizophrenia, which is hallucinations and delusions, along with mood disorder symptoms like depression or mania. So, also remember, she's also got this bipolar disorder. She was diagnosed with severe depression and then later on diagnosed with personality disorder. And personality disorders, they're often characterized by patterns of thinking and behavior and emotions that move away from what society would say was quote unquote normal. And this can cause distress or difficulty in relationships, in work, or any other area of life. And this combination of all of these different symptoms would likely result in significant challenges with the Julie's emotions, her perception of reality, and her own personal relationships. Could have, and these are just symptoms of these things, severe mood swings, psychotic symptoms like hallucinations. Her personality would change. There'd be risk factors like self harm and so forth. And, I'm no psychologist, no psychiatrist, anything like that. But what I did learn was that someone who has all of these conditions would need consistent psychiatric care and therapy and long term management of these disorders. So let's continue with Julie's story. So Julie, it's now 2008. She's in Florida. Calyx was a teenager in high school, and Beau, he's an eighth grader, still in middle school. And what happened was the relationship between Calyx and Julie began to become very strained. Now, it's a teenage girl and her mother. This is nothing unusual. Calyx was very, very independent, and she could be critical of her mom. And often, when Julie couldn't get out of bed, Calyx would have to take on the role of mom, and she began to resent this. It had started to get so bad that Calyx had actually applied to a boarding school just so that she could get some space between her and her mom. Now, Parker attempted to talk to both of them, telling Julie that she needed to be the adult in the relationship, that she was reverting to childish tactics with a child, and it wasn't getting anywhere. In 2009, Julie thought that Parker, her husband, had put cameras in the house to watch her all the time. Now, he didn't, and this likely was the result of just one of her conditions. Another time, she thought that she saw the figure of an angel in a television set that was turned off. Then in 2010, Julie underwent a series of surgeries, and it resulted in Julie becoming addicted to OxyContin. Now, Parker, he refused to let Julie drive the kids anywhere because of this addiction. The relationship between Julie and Calyx also began to get much worse. And in Julie's personal journal, she wrote that Calyx had called her pathetic and that Julie had told her daughter that she was an evil soul. Now, their conversations often turned into arguments where they ended up calling each other names. Now, during this whole time, though, the family had been attending group therapy sessions, and Julie was also attending individual sessions herself. So, what drove Julie to do the unthinkable? Well, the months leading up to January 2011, when the crimes occurred, do offer some clues. In November of 2010, Julie's life was spiraling even further out of control. She was involved in a car accident while she was under the influence of prescription medications and alcohol. Now, ironically, she was on her way to an AA meeting. Now, this accident involved injury and $26,000 in property damage. Now, she pleaded no contest. She paid a $151 fine and then completed driving school. Now, her husband, Parker, after this happened, kicked her out of their home, and it forced Julie to find a place to stay. Now, there are two stories to this. One is that she spent the night in the family vehicle. The other is that she stayed in a hotel by herself for a couple of days. Now, this one actually seems the most logical, right? Nonetheless, 2 days after this accident, her husband took her to a rehab center in Clearwater, and she spent weeks there. After she got back home around November 28th of 2010, she continued using oxycodone and alcohol. At some point, Julie became aware of this series of emails that had been circulating through the family that were in relation to her. Now, it's unknown how she found out about these emails or even if she knew what they actually said, but she began to worry that the reason for these emails was because Parker was going to divorce her. We do know that one of the emails was written by Parker on January 15th, 2011. And he said that those who were critical of his handling of his wife's depression and mental illness needed to step back, saying, he's endured 20 years of dealing with these issues. I didn't break her, but have been patiently working behind the scenes to pick up the pieces and pick up the slack when she falters. In January, the same January where this email was sent, Parker had actually been called overseas to Qatar for a brief amount of time, which left Julie and the kids by themselves. He did ask Julie if she'd be okay by herself with the kids or if she wanted him to get his mom or someone else to stay with her, but Julie said things would be fine. On Saturday, January 22nd, 2011, 5 days before the crime, Julie woke up with a clear thought in her head. She knew that she could shoot her children and then shoot herself so that the three of them could go to heaven together and be with God. Julie would, quote, save her children from all the things that she thought would happen to them. She fully believed that her children were being abused and that they would eventually suffer from the same mental illness that she herself had. That day, Julie took the kids to their sports practices. She watched Beau play soccer and then brought him home. Now, after dropping off Beau, she then drove to a gun store in Oldsmar, Florida, about 25 minutes away. There, Julie walked into a local gun shop and purchased a 38 caliber revolver. Now, the employees there, they remember her as being kind and articulate. They said that she needed the gun for protection after some home invasion robberies in her neighborhood. She did get frustrated when she learned that she would have to wait for 3 days before she could pick up the gun. She had had plans for the gun that day. So a couple of days go by, and on Tuesday, the 25th, Calyx had told her mom that she needed her mom to dress up and wear makeup for some kind of appointment at school. Now, evidently, Calyx wasn't nice about this, also calling her mom evil in the same breath. The following day, on Wednesday, Julie decided to make Calyx's favorite dinner for her. That same night, Julie sent 2 emails. One was addressed to Parker, and the other was addressed to the family. In the email to Parker, she wrote, "Get home soon, we're waiting for you." In the email to the family, she thanked them for their support and said, quote, "It's really difficult and I'm so sick mentally. I minimally take care of the kids, sad to say. Beau has also developed Calyx's attitude, makes me cry evening, seeing what they've become. As far as 180 from their former daring selves. I will end this soon, though. I'm at my wit's end." That same morning, Parker received an email that had the subject line of "Love you all," and then goes on to say, quote, "Have tried to call Julie on both home and cell. Also Beau, and sent Beau a text to call me right now. Very concerned about Julie." On Thursday, the 27th, Julie took Calyx to practice and then went to the Hard Rock Casino to gamble for several hours. During this same time, Julie also headed back to Oldsmar to pick up her gun. While she was there, she purchased hollow point bullets. She knew that she had to get home and to be there when Beau got there. When Julie arrived home, Beau then got into the car and was ready to head to soccer practice. As she was taking Beau to practice, she pulled out the gun as she was driving. As you might imagine, Beau was terrified. Julie then fired a shot at the windshield. Beau told her to put the gun away or he was going to punch her. Julie then pointed the gun at his head and pulled the trigger. She turned around and headed back home, where she then parked the SUV in the garage and then shot Beau a second time near what Julie called the sassy mouth. Julie then walked upstairs to Calyx's room, where she was working on her computer. When Calyx noticed her, she asked her mom what she was doing, and Julie responded with, "Just seeing what you're doing," and then walked up behind Calyx and shot her in the head. Calyx fell off her chair onto the floor, where her mom then shot her in the mouth. Later, Julie would tell investigators that she shot both the kids in the mouth because they were too sassy. A note was found in the garage in Parker's parking space that said, "Sorry about your parking space. Had to leave it for Beau, my darling, precious child." On the calendar that was inside the house, something else was written. It was written on February 1st, the day that Parker was supposed to come back home. It said, "Beau was in the van on the way to practice. Calyx is in her bed. Tried to make her comfortable." In the stairwell, there was another note that said, "DNR, donate my body to science." Julie had kept a journal, and it gave some very interesting insights into her mindset at the time. After the crimes, Julie wrote in her journal that Beau, quote, had a healthy fright when he saw the gun. She also wrote that she had planned to unalive herself, but didn't want to use the gun. So instead, she tried to overdose on lithium and Coumadin. Now, lithium, that is used to treat bipolar disorder, and Coumadin is a blood thinner meant to prevent blood clots. She also wrote that if her husband had been there, she could have killed him too. Quote, that would have been a crying shame, she wrote. Now, Julie, she had tried to get Beau out of the car and put him in her bed. She said that it was the place where Beau slept the best whenever Parker was out of town, but she couldn't lift him. She wrote in her journal, I would like to die by Beau in our bed. That would be nice. Beau and I are going to heaven. Wish heaven for Calyx, too. We're going home today. Take us home, Lord. Also written in the journal was, kids of parents tend to commit themselves. Calyx has been talking about since she was 12. I believe I've saved them from the pain. I wish this on nobody, ever. I'm blocking their suffering. And a note to her husband, Parker, you've been so good to us. I've learned so much from you. I'm so sorry I've taken that away from you. Parker, I'm sorry. So sorry. I don't know what to say, but I sense divorce was inevitable. But I can't live alone. In my last 7 weeks in bed, no one came into the bedroom to see how I was. You didn't teach the kids to be compassionate. Neither were you. I just needed a little chat. My meds never kicked in. Might have made a difference. Thought Dr. Obregon tried hard. He'd hold me accountable. AA couldn't do it. I'm not an alcoholic. Didn't need a detox and used oxys 1 or 2 for pain as prescribed. I would have went to the psych ward instead of alcohol/addict ward. I admit my brain is trashed. I don't believe I could ever recover or make up for my failures over the years. She then wrote, it was my time to go. Heaven's waiting for me, for I have done my job on this earth. The best job I ever had was having and bringing up my babies. This is why I had to bring them on with me. I'll put the gun to my head and pull the trigger. I just always imagined my death would be by carbon monoxide poisoning. I don't want to be saved. I'm ready to die. After Julie's arrest, she was taken to the Tampa Police Department where she was questioned. And according to police, Julie told them that she did the crime because they talked back. They were mouthy and she was tired of it. Now, later, the recording of Julie's interrogation would be released, and it most definitely doesn't read as if they're speaking to a woman in her right mind. During questioning, Julie said, I just talked to my kids. I shot them. I was going to shoot myself. And after she's read her Miranda rights, and after the section that states you have the right to remain silent, they asked if she understood that, and she yelled, yeah. When they got to the part about anything she said could be used against her in a court of law, she said, I don't want to go to court. Should I get a lawyer? The detective then asked her to let him finish and then said that it was up to her if she wanted to get a lawyer. At which point she said, I should have paid attention to all the squeaks in the chairs. She then asks if her kids are coming in later. And the detective was confused and asked her to repeat herself. So she says, are my kids coming in later? At which point she was told that they would talk about that. She then was asked about the condition of her children, and Julie responded by saying, they're a mess. I hope they're dead. He asked her about the previous day and about what happened. And he asks if she picked up the kids from school. And she answered that Monday, Wednesday, Friday is her day, explaining about the carpool. When asked about the blood that was found on her hands at the scene, she said, I tried to hug my kids and tell them, I'll see you again in heaven if I ever get to heaven. And that she loved them from birth through 6, and then continued saying they were mean. They were really mean. According to one detective, Julie did nod off once or twice during the interview, but then gave lucid answers about the killings, saying, Beau went first, Calyx went second. I sure as hell wanted to go third. And after shooting Beau, Julie had said, I can't think. I hated shooting him, but it's better. It's better than carbon monoxide. That's what I was going to do. She then goes on to explain that she planned to leave the car in the attached garage with the motor running while the children were in their home. Now, just before midnight, of course, she's at the jail. She gets transferred to Tampa General Hospital's intensive care unit. She was shaking uncontrollably and no one knew what was wrong. Well, we find out, of course, she was unresponsive when the police first showed up to the house. She was laying out by the pool. And then they did all of this questioning, but she had taken all of that lithium and all of that Coumadin prior to the police getting there. So during this whole time, she's on all of these, but evidently something just didn't kick in until later on that night, and she just couldn't control her bodily movements at that point in time. Now, when Julie first met with the judge, her attorney entered a not guilty plea on her behalf. Two deputies had to actually hold Julie's arms to keep her upright, and she looked as if she barely knew anything that was going on around her. She was held without bail until trial. Now, when it came time for the children's funerals, Julie couldn't understand why she couldn't go. She even offered to color her hair and sit in the back so that no one would notice her. Parker actually didn't even meet with his wife until days after she was arrested. And at that point in time, he told her that he planned to file for divorce. And the meeting, which evidently was very emotional, lasted for less than an hour. Now, that same day, he went and filed for divorce. Julie evidently had said to him, I guess I stomped your heart flat. Now, it's unknown how long after this meeting with Julie, but Julie did counterfile for divorce, stating that Parker was shipping her things to Texas without her consent. And in this countersuit, Julie said that Parker had barred her representatives from the home when they tried to go in and conduct a survey or an inventory. She asked a judge to immediately return the goods and to make a video accounting of the possessions. I'm not sure if this was ever done, but what we do know is that it only took 4 months for the divorce to be granted. Now, as Julie's attorneys, they're preparing for trial. They know that she's already admitted to the crime. So the only thing that they could do is to use an insanity defense. Now, this type of defense, this is rarely used. And if it is, jurors rarely buy it. Florida law requires a finding that if the defendant had a mental disease or defect that prevented them from knowing the difference between right or wrong, that this is the definition of whether or not someone was actually insane. Now, in Julie's case, this was going to be a little tough to do because considering she purchased a gun days earlier, right? They also intend to say, Julie's attorneys, that Parker was negligent when he left Julie alone to take care of the children while he was overseas, and that he owed a duty of care to his wife and his kids. During the trial, Julie's attorney told the jury that Julie, when she was 6 years old, had been, and she was also at 17 years old. The situation that occurred when Julie was 6 actually required her to testify in court in front of her. I can't imagine what that would do to such a young mind. And who puts a 6-year-old on the stand? Anyway, I digress. We also learned that when Julie was 49, just 1 year before this crime, she talked about getting her psychiatrist's comb and getting his DNA from it so she could use it to get pregnant and then give the child up for adoption. Now, as you might imagine, her journals were admitted into evidence. And while we've talked about some of the things in her journals, we haven't talked about everything. One of the entries was that she had instructions to cremate herself, Julie, and the children, and then to mix their ashes together so that they could be together forever. She further described the crime, saying, shot the two mouthy mouths in the mouth after shooting them in the head. She describes her husband as unhelpful and uncompassionate and wrote that he was about to leave her. And then in another entry, she wrote, the evil starts Thursday. Someone who had cleaned the Schenecker home the day before the shootings testified that on this day, Julie didn't need help making out a check to her. But it kind of makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? Was this unusual? Did Julie usually need help making out a check? And if her mental state was that bad, why is she being left alone with her kids? So Julie's now ex-husband Parker, he also testified in trial that he had emailed Julie's doctor because he felt he wasn't getting the full story from Julie, and then gave this doctor details about what Julie was doing and that she wasn't taking some of her meds and she was staying in bed and she was fighting with Calyx. And the doctor said that he couldn't share that information about Julie because she never signed a waiver allowing the doctor to talk with Parker. She was asked to, but she refused. Now, other psychiatrists testified that she would not have killed her children but for the mental illness that she suffered. Now, during Thanksgiving, this would be in 2010, evidently Parker took everyone to visit family in another part of Florida. And this would be everyone except Julie. He would not take her out of treatment to go with him. Some other things that were learned was that even after she committed the crime, she wasn't convinced that the kids were dead. She put blankets on them and she spoke to them because she thought they were cold. And in a surprising piece of testimony, we learned that Calyx was found with a smile on her face. It was actually Julie who had put it there after she had moved Calyx to the bed and covered her with the blanket. Now, once the jury received the case, it took them less than 3 hours to reach a verdict. They did not believe that Julie was insane at the time, and she was sentenced to 2 life terms without parole. A little later on, after Julie was arrested and sent to jail, Parker did an interview with People magazine, and he said that his family was a typical American family, but we had a sick member. It was a chronic mental illness that we've been dealing with for 20 years in the family. I never had any indication that she would harm the children or that she would ever think of taking the children's lives. It was absolutely incredible when I found out she did. He did admit that Calyx could be very angry and at times very disrespectful, but that he had no safety concerns for his family, and that because he works for the military's advocacy program, he is able to recognize when there is a problem. So, what is this program? Well, this program provides resources to support families that are facing personal or domestic challenges. It helps service members recognize and address problems like stress, family conflict, or mental health concerns through counseling, education, and intervention services. Now, Parker's involvement meant that he was trained to identify warning signs and connect people to the right resources. Now, maybe he couldn't recognize the severity of Julie's problem because he was too close to the problem. Who knows? Months after Julie was arrested, Parker then filed a wrongful death lawsuit against her. He states in the lawsuit that his wife's actions were so outrageous in character and so extreme in degree as to go beyond all possible decency. They were atrocious and utterly intolerable in a civilized community. And just when you think that a case like this has reached its conclusion. I mean, we know what the crimes were, who did it, and the punishment. There's always more to uncover. After the trial ended and Julie began to serve her sentence, she did something unexpected. She agreed to sit down for interviews from jail. Now, what's striking is how much these conversations reveal about Julie's mindset. They kind of offer a look into her thoughts coming directly from her regrets, and, maybe the contradictions in her story. So, what you're going to hear next are segments, just segments from an interview done in 2015 by Serena Fasan of ABC Action News in Tampa Bay. If you want to view the entire interview with Julie, I'll have the link for you in the show notes.
How it flipped. You want to know what happened, or what I think happened?
What do you think happened? What do you think happened?
I think that the fact that I love them so much that I had to protect them.
But protect them from what, Julie? Tell us.
I saved them. I protected them from Beau and I were completely simpatico. Completely. He knew what I was thinking. If I was crying, he would be crying right now. He's probably crying right now. Every feeling I had, he had. And when I knew he was being sexually abused, I couldn't let this happen to him.
Who was sexually abusing him, though? Who?
The person knows who. That person knows.
Was it someone at school? Was it?
The person knows, okay? And God knows. And that's all that matters.
And then for Calyx, what were you protecting her from then?
And mental issues, because she told me she was bipolar when she was in 8th grade. She told me she was bipolar.
A lot of people who are trying to understand, because
they're never going to understand. They'll never understand.
So when you pulled the trigger, were you sick? I mean, are you saying that it was your mental illness that may have done it?
I don't know. I don't know about what was.
Because, the jury, it took the jury only 2 hours
Right.
to reach a verdict, and they didn't believe that you were sick.
Right.
Were you surprised that it only took them 2 hours to come up with a verdict?
No, I wanted that to happen.
Why did you want that to happen, Julie?
Because they dropped the death penalty.
So you wanted to be found guilty? And why did you want to be found guilty? Please tell me why you wanted to be found guilty.
I wanted to be punished.
For killing your kids? Are you allowed to take any medication now while in prison?
Yeah.
So, are you on an antidepressant or?
Mm-hmm.
suited what you did then?
Death. I wanted the death penalty.
You wanted the death penalty. But Julie,
And they dropped it.
but you said to me that you don't regret what you did and you don't think you did anything wrong.
I didn't say I didn't regret it. You asked me if I would do it again.
I'm sorry. I asked if you would do it again, and you said you would do it again, and you don't feel what you did was wrong.
I didn't say that either. I didn't say I didn't think it was wrong.
Okay, then tell me.
Did I? Did I say? Please roll the tape back.
Do you, well...
Did I say what I did wasn't wrong?
Well, do you, and maybe let me ask you again, do you think maybe I didn't even ask you that. Do you think what you did was wrong? Because I'm trying to understand why you want to be punished, but why you don't, why if you had the chance, here's what I'm trying to understand. Because I did ask you if you would do it again, right? And you said you would do it again, but you feel like you need to be punished. So doesn't that mean that you realize what you did was wrong? And then why would you do it again if you knew it was wrong? That's what I'm trying to understand.
If I knew it was wrong, I wouldn't do it again. If I knew I would be punished, that wouldn't bother me. I'm used to being punished. I don't care if I get punished. Punishment doesn't bother me. I've been punished all my life. But I can handle punishment.
But you wanted to be
punished. Punishment.
You wanted to die, though. You wanted to be sentenced.
Right. But they quit on me. My attorney quit.
But if you had a chance to do it over, would you do the same thing? Would you kill your kids?
I would save them and protect them. I don't know if there's another way to protect them, but that's the only thing I can think of doing to protect them.
Do you remember?
I can't think of another way. I can't think of another way to save them. And now they're in heaven, so they're saved. And that's the only thing I can think that would be good for them. Because now they don't have to live the life I lived.
What kind of life did you live? Is it because you struggle with bipolar disorder and struggle with mental illness?
When I was 6 years old, I testified in court against a neighbor man who molested me. And he was found guilty. That's the first time I was sexually assaulted at 6 years old. And I was at 17, I wasn't even sexually active. So I was raped as a virgin, and my whole life has been a mess in that way.
Because of that, right? So what message would you like me to relay?
If you, I'm going to tell you when I told my husband, don't ever put me in a mental institution again.
So you want to be
He
able-
did what I said. He didn't do what was right. And I think women, I don't know, see, this is very in depth.
But you think he should have put you in the mental institution?
Yeah, yes.
Wow.
Oh, yes. But he couldn't because his career was first.
So your message is, if
Our
there's someone,
pride, I'm just going to say our, not his, our pride kept us from addressing mental health.
why did you try to put a smile on Calyx's face?
She was smiling, and this side wasn't smiling. And this side was smiling. And so I made this side smile. I saw them, their body, their little soul went right out of their body and went to heaven. They never died. She went like this. And then this yellow thing around her came up and went through the ceiling. And then I picked her up and put her in bed and covered her up. And I sat her up and I hugged her, and she didn't hug me back. And I laid her down and I kissed her goodnight and I covered her up. And then I realized I forgot to cover up Beau, and it was January, so I went and got a blanket and I covered him up and kissed him goodnight. And I didn't see any blood at all. But 3.5 years later, I saw blood in the pictures.
You know, as we close this episode of Beach House 34, it's crucial to recognize that stories like these highlight the importance of mental health awareness. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental illness, please know that help is available. In the United States, you can reach the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by dialing 988. For support and resources related to mental health, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, offers free confidential assistance through their helpline at 1-800-950-NAMY. In other words, 6264. So again, 1-800-950-6264. Or you can visit their website at nami.org. And I will have these links for you in the show notes. Remember, no one has to face these struggles alone. If you're feeling overwhelmed, reach out. There is support and there is hope. Thank you for listening, and take care of yourselves and each other. Next week, we'll hear the story about the disappearance of Lauren Spearer, and that will be next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I hope to see you there, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.